Where we continue a conversation that we had previously about helping children to cope with separation and divorce, and we do that inside your Spotlight on Now.
Now, the conversation continues this morning on coping with separation and divorce. Now, this week we're going to focus particularly on children and the effects this can have on them and their well-being. Joining us this morning is clinical psychologist Isolde Ali-Ghent. Isolde, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Now.
Good morning. Thank you for having me again.
So I know last time that you were here, we spoke about separation and divorce as it relates to the parents. And so now we want to look at how it relates to the children. And so I guess, first of all, when a child is in a relationship, whether they have to be with their mother or their father, what sort of effect, or even a guardian, what sort of effect then can this have on the child mentally? And would you see some of that symptom showing out in a physical way?
You know, in my practice, I've seen so many different divorce situations, and it doesn't have to be a tough, horrendous situation at all. It doesn't have to be a process that is guttural for everybody, but sometimes it is, and it is. Transition is difficult, and I think last time we saw each other, we spoke about how difficult it can be for adults. Coping with change, coping with changes in routine, facing the sadness and disappointments, the letdowns of the expectations. So when we're dealing with children and are helping our children cope as parents, I think the first thing we have to do is really put our own experiences in perspective, because we want to avoid transferring our adult issues onto children. And for me in my practice, that's the number one issue when I see children coming in and weighing heavy is the parental discord. So why would it be difficult? So transition can be scary for some because of the unknown. What will this look like? What will the new norm look like? What are some factors that would impede smooth transition to something that might just be a natural progression? If the divorce is handled amicably and factually, then you could support your child in terms of, okay, what are your needs? This is how it's going to be. Sometimes I have parents coming into me saying, okay, they plan on divorcing or separating. They've already told their kids, but there's no plan. So the children are stuck in this limbo. They don't know what's happening. They're going between mommy and daddy's rooms. They have become now the main communicators between your mother, tell your mother this, tell your father this, but don't tell anybody anything. They've learned to then hide and suppress and repress their own feelings in favor of how it looks, which means that their own sense of worthiness and competency and authenticity is put aside in favor of image and in managing the adult relations. So that's extreme in terms of allowing a child to live an authentic life.
Yeah.
So what could it look like?
Right, but so this is one example of children, being able to deal with it in a certain way. But for the ones who are old enough to understand exactly what it is going on, like say, for example, somebody who is, maybe 12, 30, even in secondary school, how are they going to deal with that separation, especially if, let's say, for example, they were closer to one parent than the other, and unfortunately, they're living with the parent that they weren't so close with?
And I'm going to put it right back on the parents there. It's really important to allow your child to love both parents. In my practice, again, I would just say that I've seen where there is quite a bit of polarization. Parents try to attempt to hurt each other through using their children, and whether you're 60 or 16, yes, it might take different forms, but at the end of the day, it comes down to establishing routine and keeping communication open and allowing a child to spend time with his or her parent and establishing what that's going to look like and what form that's going to take.
Yeah, and even, I mean, could also isolation be an effect of divorce? Because some children, they become so closed in. And so I'm just wondering for, mothers, parents, fathers going through a divorce, what are some of the red flags that they can look for in their children to know if it is they're being negatively affected by divorce or separation?
The first thing we want to look at, there are some I think, quite obvious red flags if you choose to, and I use my words well, choose to look for them and choose to notice what's going on. Declining grades, that's a big red flag right there. The cornerstone of depression, whether it's childhood or adult depression, is a loss of interest in previously enjoyed activities, what we call anhedonia, where a child no longer has the interest in, say, playing sports or socializing. Remember, we had spoken about the changes in socializing, where kids go, you're spending time with the other side. If this is also cut off from them, then they're limited in who they can be around. And that can cause also a stress, not being able to access not just the parents, but the parent families, the grandparents, the aunts and uncles, the friends of the family. By putting that ban on them, they're also limited to who they can speak to, their safety net. Kids need to feel safe, number one. Safety precedes learning. So safety is the number one. If a child is not feeling safe, yes, you're quite right. You will see that withdrawal, that isolation. You will see that disconnect, that loss of interest, the declining grades, the crying. And the other thing too is children don't always use their words to say, "Mommy or Daddy, I'm depressed, I'm sad," because they may not even understand. They may not understand how to manage feelings of guilt or shame. Many children say, you know what, it's my responsibility to put my parents back together because I need to save the situation. So they take on responsibility that isn't there, or they may bear witness to an overtly grieving parent and take on the role of protector there. So taking on roles that are not theirs, that's a huge red flag as well.
Yeah, why do you think they take on these roles? Because we've seen it time and time again where a lot of people are like, okay, cool. When they have the conversation with their children, they make sure to say, this is not on you. We are not blaming you. You are not the reason for the separation. But why do children believe that they may be the reason that their parents are getting divorced, or that they have to take on that responsible role in terms of, for example, sons protecting their mothers, or, girls staying with their fathers? Why do they have these rules?
Because they see the grieving process and they don't understand it. And even though you tell a child not to take it on, they will take it on. Putting in that boundary and probably letting them in too much into the adult situations, the adult relations that they don't need to be part of. It's one thing. I mean, what I've seen in my office, and it's guttural to see, it's parental alienation, and this is where one parent will try to manipulate a child against another one, and it could take different degrees. It could be from, say, bad talking the other one, or saying bad things about the other parent, or having that one parent's friends and family members just really just trash the other parent, which is destructive as well, because in a sense you're saying that you're not allowed to love or be with that person, or if you do, there's something wrong with you. If you say to the child, well, you're just like your mother, you're just like your father, and you proceed to bad talk them, then really you're bad talking the child. Ergo, if I'm like him or I'm like her, then what is it that I can do to fix this situation so that maybe you'll love us a little bit more and maybe it won't be as bad?
Yeah.
In extreme cases, I will tell you this: parental alienation is considered abuse, because the ramifications of the extreme parental alienation can result in low self-esteem, failure to be able to develop social connections later on, withdrawal, isolation, dissociation. And many times we find that the courts prolonged court proceedings can add to this, because then you have money and resources, and you have all kinds of things that are put in there that honestly favor
Yeah.
discord over the well-being of the child.
Yeah.
So there's a lot put on some children, and I would say parental alienation is the number one factor that could be so destructive for children caught in the middle of a divorce.
So
It's
then
like,
how
no,
can we
don't
help
choose
them? So
him.
then how can we help them navigate divorce then? So then is there a solution? How can we help them cope with, parental alienation, or even, withdrawal and that sort of thing?
Well, for parental alienation, there has to be an awareness, because I would like to say that the majority of people who've come into my office, barring those who are not narcissistic or overtly doing this, may not be aware of how destructive or how damaging their words can be on a child. And so number one is it's awareness. Number two, the most important thing is, I think I just said a little bit earlier on, is establishing safety. So a child may say to you, well, when am I going to see you? How is this going to work? What about my stuff? What happens to the pets? It's and I've seen that as well, where the
Yeah.
dogs go or the cats go. And so safety, number one, safety, establishing routine, school, extracurriculars, making sure that there is time spent with both parents so that there's that equal input.
Yeah.
And really just banning the adult discord in front of the kids, but
Yeah.
routine and constant reassurance of love and commitment, not just by the parents, but the parents, the parental teams.
Yeah. Isolde, at what point do you think a parent should seek therapy for their children? Because some people might think they're too young to go through that sort of thing. And so at what point do you think a therapist needs to step in and kind of guide the conversation and guide the situation to help out this young child?
The key to this is being proactive. Honestly, I would not wait to see the red flags to then my suggestion would be to talk to someone, a therapist, a child professional, say, this is what's happening, these are our plans, this is what our intentions are, and he or she can guide you accordingly. Okay, well, let's come up with a plan. How is this going to look? What are you guys going to do? What have you been saying? And sort out the adult issues first and the logistics issues first. How are we going to be able to ensure that there is appropriate time spent with each person, especially if we have location issues? The family was from South and some are moving up to the West because of job opportunities, or they're going back to their families. How are you navigating location and distance and such? What is, and even things like school books, uniforms, making sure that they're sufficient on either side. If you can afford it, making sure they're double things on either side so that you're not scrambling to go between the two houses because you forgot the books here or you forgot the shoes there. It's a lot of pressure on a
It's a
child,
lot of things to
you
consider.
know,
Yeah.
it
And
is, yeah,
yeah.
packing your books. Ease up the responsibility on the child. Take it on yourself as the adult.
Yeah.
But most of all, again, I'm going to go back to our previous conversation. Make sure that you are taking care of you so that you can take care of your little ones as well.
And finally, Isolde, I also wanted to know, would we see different red flags depending on the ages of the children? Because we may think that because they're young, they may be able to bounce back quickly, or because they're older, they may be able to handle that sort of separation and quickly as well. Do you know any sort of links or therapists as well that we can go to get additional information?
So yes, depending on the age and the temperament of the child, you might see, if you have a naturally anxious child, you might see that there might be more clinginess, or you might see the withdrawal. For teenagers, watch out for who they're hanging out with, if there's a change in friends. the quick fix. You're looking for the quick fix. Some kids lose themselves in things like video games where they just shut out the world. So it really depends on age and temperament and availability of resources as well.
Yeah. And those resources quickly, Isolde, is it that we can find them on the Ministry of Health's website, or is it, I mean, where can we go to if we're looking for a therapist?
You could go on the Ministry of, you could go to social support as well. You could go to student support and Ministry of Education. They may have a list, of course, Families in Action. You can access that. There are resources out there. For those of you who are employed, you could go to your company and see if there's an employee assistance program that you can access for therapy. And if not, you can always, I think you can always, I would go to the ministry, yeah.
I think that's the first.
You can always access me.
Yes.
And you could also access me as well. And, if you want, you can call my office and then we can give you a list of resources as well. We have a list at our office where people can access.
Well, Isolde, let me thank you so much for coming in again and, well, of course, joining us virtually, but sharing the information with us. Of course, we're going to have you again because I love the avenue that this conversation is taking. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.